being held virtually via Zoom, and all audio and video is being streamed for the public. Are there any questions before we get started? Because of the new open meetings requirement, we ask that you keep your camera on anytime business is being discussed, but you may stay muted unless speaking or voting. First order of business is to ask Dr. Offit to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Walker. Whitney Allen. C.B. Akins. Rochelle Brown.
Present.
David Carpenter. Robert Croft.
Here.
Kelly Ellis.
Present.
Myra Gomez. Faith Kemper.
Present.
Letitia Robertson.
Present.
And Lane Walker.
Present.
Madam
Do we
Chair,
have a quorum?
Madam Chair, we do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Although he was unable to join us today, I did want to take a moment to let you know that Dr. C.B. Akins has been recently appointed to the committee, and we look forward to his thoughtful leadership. We are now going to hear from Lee Nimitz, CPE Chief of Staff, who's going to provide us with updates from the CPE board meeting. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Walker. Glad to be here with you all today. Dawn asked me to touch base with the committee about the work of the CPE board, as well as sort of highlights of CPE work in general. So I want to give a quick overview, and Dawn didn't give me a time limit, so I'm thinking, what, 45 minutes, something like that. Dawn, does that work for you?
I know you, Lee.
Well, I first wanted to say that the board met in retreat and in their business meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I think had a terrific opportunity to sort of spend some time thinking deliberately about the direction of the organization and some of the key, both things that we had been able to accomplish over the past year, as well as the direction moving forward. We heard from Senate President Stivers. We heard from Nancy Zinfer, who is president of the National Association of System Heads, to talk about the value of systems. There was a lot of good opportunity for give and take among the board members. And at the end of the retreat, the board presented some ideas about a vision moving forward that really captured, I think, two key areas. One is improving collaboration, coordination, and communication with Kentucky stakeholders, as well as the public and the post-secondary institutions and workforce leaders. And then the second broad area is continuing the strong work in Kentucky, and particularly of this committee, to remove barriers and increase supports to and through college completion for all students, with a continued focus on underrepresented minoritized students and low-income student populations. So I thought that was, I think, just another sort of public statement of commitment to the work of the Committee on Equal Opportunities. And I think the strong commitment CPE has had over the years to improving opportunity for all Kentuckians. So happy to respond to any questions about the retreat. The business meeting that we had was good. We took some action on a couple of programs. We took some action related to tuition. And then we got some updates, and I wanted to provide a couple of those updates here for folks who might not be aware of some of the work that's going on in the agency right now. The first is that, as I know that you all have been briefed on, CPE was charged with developing a study or completing a study that looked at some big ticket items in post-secondary education. The study report is due on December 1st. We have had a number of CPE staff working pretty diligently over the last several months to begin gathering data and thinking about the analysis. We just hired Ernst & Young to be our partner consultant in this work, and they're going to be doing a lot of the outreach with key stakeholders to begin to think a little bit more deeply about the sort of three driving questions in this joint resolution. The first is, does Kentucky have the right governance structure in post-secondary education to drive the kinds of progress that we need to for our population? The second question is related to that, but more focused on KCTCS. So questions about, does, the current KCTCS structure, I guess for all practical purposes, work in the best interests of students? Is there a need to change with a specific focus on whether or not the regional comprehensive universities should have more of a governance role in the transfer portion of the community college education, community technical college education? And the third area is really looking at an area of the state that Kentucky has looked at in previous studies related to post-secondary education, and that's Southeast Kentucky. Do we have enough public residential post-secondary offerings for students in the southeast part of the state to ensure that that part of the state benefits from the kinds of economic prosperity and economic development that public university can bring? And so those are the three big questions that we at CPE have been spending a lot of our time and energy thinking about over the past really 2 or 3 months, and we'll continue to do so through the end of the year. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, or we could talk about some other things that are going on in the agency. Well, Chair Walker, you'll indulge me just for a couple more minutes. I'll just mention some things that are going on.
Absolutely.
During the last legislative session, CPE was also charged with managing and developing what is called the Healthcare Workforce Investment Fund. This is sort of a first in the nation effort to really, in a structured way, pull together our healthcare providers with our post-secondary institutions to not only provide sort of dedicated scholarships for students who need to be pursuing some of these high need healthcare workforce professions, but also to try and provide some funding, and this is all matching dollars, to really improve and develop some healthcare workforce programs that are much needed. And so that work is going on. As you can imagine, that's a big lift. We are just at a point where the board will be adopting regulations which will guide that work. We have begun the process of really diving deep into career development on the campuses. This is an area, as you know, of interest to President Thompson and our board. Are our post-secondary institutions providing the kinds of transition supports, counseling, connections to the workforce as they are progressing through their academic programs? So Rick Smith is leading those discussions, and we're having some interesting, really interesting conversations about the ways the post-secondary community can collaborate to really strengthen those services for students. Another area of work, which really, I think, dovetails nicely with the work of the Committee on Equal Opportunities, is our sort of growing attention at the state level to student basic needs. So we know that our students need tuition support. What we have not done as good a job on is thinking about all of the other financial resources that students need that they don't have access to. For example, housing. Do they have food security? Do they have childcare? All of these huge barriers that keep an individual from progressing in post-secondary education and then being able to translate that into a meaningful career. So we created a statewide action network looking at sort of a series of recommendations that we're going to be making to our board and to the state about ways that the higher ed community can come together with our partner agencies to really improve those structures for students with basic needs that need basic needs support. I guess the only other two things that I'll mention are that you may know that our performance funding model, which has been a very important source of resources for the campuses and a sort of a lever for the state to drive the kinds of performance that we want, is in the middle of a review process. So that is a process that takes several months. Your university presidents, as well as legislators, as well as folks from CPE, are engaged in that conversation. So we're looking at things like, okay, are the metrics that we're using to distribute funding, are they driving the kinds of educational opportunity that we want? We still know that our low income students are not progressing at the level that we want them to. Do we need to tweak the performance funding model? Excuse me. We know that adult learners are not coming to post-secondary education, or they're dropping out in greater numbers. Is there something the performance funding model can do there? So all of that's on the table. And then finally, the upcoming legislative session. It used to be that summertime we weren't thinking about the upcoming legislative session, but we really are now. So there's lots of conversation going on. We're already being asked to testify. There's certainly, as you all know, some national conversations about things like DEI that are ongoing, that we are beginning to become certainly much more engaged in. And then there
Is
are
it me or are we?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I heard some of it breaking up. Was that my computer or? It was my computer. Okay, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No. Yeah, if you can't hear me, just jump right in. So I'll just finish up by saying that we have, as a CPE staff and our CPE board, have already started really jumping into thinking about the upcoming legislative session. It is going to be a huge session. Not only is money on the table, it's a budget session, but there are lots of questions, policy questions around education that are bubbling and that we want to be engaged in and part of a thoughtful conversation about. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments.
I do think it's important to note that part of the discussion included information from leadership, legislative leadership, and it was clear that they were very supportive of CPE, the work that the agency does, and it sounded as though they may be open to providing additional funding, which was really good news. So that was a strong part of that session.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions for Lee? Thank you very much for that comprehensive report. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
The next item of business is the approval of the minutes. The April meeting minutes were provided in your materials. Is there a motion to approve or second?
Motion to approve.
A
Go ahead,
motion
Kelly.
by Kelly and second by
Robert.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Those are approved. Also, I just found out that my afternoon meeting has been delayed till tomorrow, so I will be able to stay for the full meeting. So thank you very much, Kelly, for agreeing to take over if needed. And I see we've got a couple more members who have joined us, Whitney Allen and Mayra Gomez. So thank you all for being here. The strategy revisions for the academic year 2023-2024 were provided in your meeting materials. Did everyone receive those? So the first one is with the Ashland Community and Technical College. Are there any questions or comments about their revisions? One of the things I did want to note is that on page 2, where it talks about impact strategies, the first one is to encourage faculty members to include culturally diverse themes in the existing curriculum. Maybe just an advisory to them that seemed a bit weak. They may need to be a little bit more active in terms of getting their faculty involved, but otherwise it looked very good. Is there a motion to.
Madam Chair,
approve?
before
Yes.
you have a motion, I will say that we may have a representative from the institutions that have strategies, if there is a question from the group. And so
Wonderful.
I'll have Gaines double check that for me before we go to call for the motion.
Absolutely.
And if you had a question or if they wanted to address that, is there someone that's representing them here, Gaines?
I'm looking through the attendees right now. Let's see. I do not see anyone on for Ashland. I had prior communications with Kevin
Okay.
Harrison, but I don't see him on here today.
Okay. So we'll make a note of that.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments about their proposal, their request? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Commissioner Allen, Whitney Allen, I'm making a motion to approve.
Whitney Allen, motion to approve second.
Robert,
Robert, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Ashland's strategy revision request has been approved. Next is the Bluegrass Community and Technical College. Do we have a representative from Bluegrass?
We do. Do you have questions? We can promote them.
Is
if you
there,
have
are there
questions.
any questions or comments for the Bluegrass Community and Technical College? I just wanted to say that it was a very ambitious proposal and well thought out.
And I think
Any-
Faith Kemper had her hand raised.
Yeah, I do have a question. When I was reviewing this again earlier on the opportunity strategy revisions, they point out that they're removing the word marketing and deliberately because they wanted to be more encompassing of other strategies. So it felt broad to me, and it says it becomes broader, but isn't that a big bite of the apple to take right now?
So we can promote a representative from Bluegrass to answer that question. Gaines? Dr. Carlos Schwartz.
Yeah. He's about to join.
Dr. Offit, you may need to make Gaines a co-host.
All right, apologies for that.
Dr. Yates,
Yates is
welcome.
on.
Hello. So we removed the marketing piece because we had 3 bullets that were very similar. And so it allowed us to roll all 3 of those into one. And so if you look, our previous one said enhanced recruitment communication for both internal and external stakeholders, enhanced communication to increase credential completion, and enhanced marketing communication for both internal and external communication. And so by removing marketing, then we were able to roll all 3 of those into one and then be able to work more broader from that one bullet point.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Yates or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
so moved.
Robert, second.
Faith,
Faith? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. That is approved. Thank you very much again, Dr. Yates, and good luck.
Thank you.
We next move to the strategy revisions for Henderson Community College. Do we have someone here from Henderson?
Yes, we have Mallory, and I will go ahead and put her to a panelist as well in case you all have any questions.
Are there any questions or comments regarding the Henderson Community College proposal? The one thing I did want to note is that there were some very strong items in here. But in looking it over, I think that in presenting the final report or the report next year, you just may want to ensure that there's more specificity on it, because I know that some proposals that we received or reports that we received this year, there's concern about them being very vague. So, again, I think that it's a very strong revision request, but you just may want to be aware of adding specifics in the report next year.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'd like to just make sure that everyone has their cameras on, because we need to make sure we are taking votes, and we have one more vote. We've got a motion from Kelly. Is there a second?
Faith.
Faith seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. We have, the Henderson has been approved. We now have the Madisonville Community College. Thank you very much, Mallory. Appreciate it. So we have Madisonville Community College. Do we have someone from Madisonville with us?
Yes, we have James Bowles and Jay Parent here with Madisonville to answer any questions that you all may have.
Great. Are there any comments or questions about the Madisonville proposal? Excellent revision requests. I'd just like to reiterate that you may want to ensure that when you provide your report next year, that you include specifics. But again, good work. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Faith moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Myra. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Bowles and Jay Parent. We now have, and I did want to mention that Kentucky State University, which is the only other institution that did not meet the minimum requirements, has decided not to seek the revision request at this time, but they still have got the opportunity in the future to do that. We now have approval of the 2023-2024 CEO meeting dates. You have those on your agenda. Just to reiterate, they are October 23rd, 2023, January 22nd, 2024, April 22nd, 2024, and June 24th, 2024. Does anyone have any concerns with this? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So motion.
Mayra has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robert. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. The dates are approved. Now we have Dr. Dawn Offit, who is the Executive Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives at CPE, who's going to provide us with summary details of the annual DEI evaluation reports. Dr. Offit.
Good afternoon, CEO members. Just wanted to take a quick moment to just reiterate where we are in terms of our DEI scores. Let me minimize this so I can share the screen. So we presented the information. I'm not going to go through this is what we did for the board, and we all know this here. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that we presented the information for the 2022 final scores to the CPE board. And so this is the culmination of this particular reporting process for this year. And as a reminder, we know that Kentucky State University was the only institution that did not meet its minimum required score for eligibility to automatically apply for a new waiver, to automatically apply for new academic programs in the upcoming academic year, along with the other two institutions, Big Sandy, as well as Henderson Community College. And so what happens then is the next step is that the beginning of July, we will for us to send out an email to them with all of the requirements for the process. We'll work with them so that they can submit their improvement plans, where they will talk to us in greater detail about what they feel was the problem, what went wrong, how they're going to remedy that, and making sure that they are addressing the fact that resources at their campuses won't be reallocated where they affect other programs and components of their institution. And so we'll give them the submission dates, et cetera, and we'll be providing any technical assistance that they may need. And so we're letting you know this now, because that will be part of the October agenda. The improvement plans that they submit have to be reviewed and have to be approved by the CEO. And so that will be one of the components of the next meeting agenda. And if they would like to also revise their strategies, then October is the last meeting date for them to be able to do that, because again, as you know, it has to be approved by the CEO. And to Chair Walker's point, Kentucky State University has also said that they're going to look at revising some of their strategies, as well as submitting an improvement plan. So a lot of work will be happening over these next couple of months in relation to that process. So just want to make sure that you all were up to speed as to how we've ended this cycle, this academic year in the process, and the next steps would be the waiver process and improvement plan will be on the agenda. So I just wanted to share that with everyone at this time. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Offit. I know that the staff in between our meetings is very diligent about reaching out to all of the colleges and universities to ensure that their reports and their programs are on target. So thank you for your hard work. This is something I've been looking forward to for a while. Dr. Offit and Jessica Romius will share a presentation of the best practices report from the first iteration of the statewide diversity policy. Daryl Peel of Northern Kentucky University, Sharmi Davis from Owensboro Community and Technical College, and Kirsten Turner of the University of Kentucky will also provide a presentation on their best practices that will be highlighted in that report. Thank you. Look forward to this.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me make sure this is all right. So thank you again. And I want to say thank you to Jessica Romius, who's done a lot of the work in terms of compiling this information, the graphs and charts that you're going to see, and just being spearheading this project. And one of the things that we wanted to do is just to provide an overview of this DEI reporting process from the last 5 years. When we look at the scores and when we talked about the evaluation of the data that we have seen, it is grounded in the DEI policy that we're currently working under. That is the 2016 iteration of that. The baseline scores from our targets for our data come from 2015, 2016. And so we've been doing this, we've done this for 5 years. The 2022 report that we just approved and we just talked about is the 6th year. So we wanted to take that first 5 years and kind of look at where we are, see if there's anything that we can glean from that information and kind of provide a comprehensive overview. And so we're in the process of finalizing a report to be able to share with you all and others about the amazing work that's gone on in the state of Kentucky around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what I'm going to share with you is just an overview of what you're going to see once that report is published. And then we also have some special guests that we've invited from our institutions just to give you a little bit more specificity on some of the things that they're doing on campus. And they'll give about a 4 or 5 minute highlight from their campuses. And so that will come after I give the overview. So again, we're going to have this document, it's going to be published, it's going to have more information in it, but we want to talk a little bit to you about what you're going to see when you get access to this particular publication. And so again, our goal was to take a 5-year overview, look back of what we've done in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so you all as CEO members know that you've been looking at the strategies, you've been talking about the strategies, you just reviewed some strategy revisions, you know that the institutions report on their strategies. And so we wanted to see if there were any commonalities in strategies. We wanted to see what our data were looking like in terms of holistically, we share the spreadsheets with you, but we didn't have one document that had for each institution all of their targets, all of their scores, just something that gave just a one-stop shop look at the scores for the institution. So we wanted to create something like that. We also wanted to make sure that if there were any best practices that we could glean from the work that we've done, we want to say, you know what? Here is an intentional look at strategies, and multiple institutions are doing the same strategy. And let's see if there's any lessons learned, anything we can learn from several institutions doing the strategies, and if they're working and if institutions are meeting their goals. And so that's kind of an overview of what you'll see as you read. There'll be some background information about the policy in this document as well, just for those individuals who are not familiar with our process. So under best practices, there are several best practices that we identified. And so let me tell you a little bit about what we did. So we actually took the best practices, put them in an Excel spreadsheet by year. So all of the strategies, all the strategies we had for 2016, 2017 for institutions, for our 4-year institutions and for our 2-year institutions, we put them in spreadsheets. And we did that for each year. As you know, strategies can be revised. So the strategies that institutions started out with were not necessarily the same strategies that they ended with at the end of this review process. So we wanted to say, okay, what are some commonalities? What are some themes? So for opportunity, which is one of the focal points, we know that opportunity refers to the recruitment and enrollment of diverse students. That's what opportunity is. And so the strategies that we were looking at by institution are telling us how each institution is focusing on recruiting and enrolling diverse students. And so as we look at common words, common themes, and review the strategies from the 2- and 4-year institutions, the 3 broad areas that came out were in some kind of way, shape, form, or fashion, institutions were talking about minimizing financial barriers for enrollment. They were talking about how they were being specific and intentional in their outreach to institutions. And we also had a few institutions that talked about how they created pipelines. So an overall, these 3 would be the broad best practices that we consider. And then what we did was we looked at institutions to see how they implemented that specifically. And so what they did was, what we did after that was to then look at the data to say, okay, institutions, is there a way that we can see if the institution was not only did they have a strategy that was repeated multiple times in or shown up in different institutions as having the same strategy, but how were they doing in their data? Were they making were they meeting their annual target each year, or were they simply did they not meet the baseline? What did their data look like? So if they were making some kind of target, some progress toward their target, if they met their target and the strategy was mentioned multiple times, then we were kind of like, this is a good way to go, and this is how we're looking at our best practices. So an example of that we have here is from Owensboro Community and Technical College. And so here is their what we call our campus scorecard. And you'll see that we start with the baseline year, and then we have kind of our traffic light, if you will, our red, our green, and our yellow, where green denotes from just a quick glance that for that particular year or overall, an institution met or exceeded their target. That for the yellow, they did not meet their target, but they finished above that 2015, 2016 baseline. And for anything in red, they finished below that baseline for their year or overall. And so as we know that when we look at the metrics, as you've done for this particular work, that the first three metrics deal with enrollment. So just simply looking at, you'll see it outlined in red, just simply looking at those first three metrics, you'll see that Owensboro Community and Technical College, for one of the metrics, they did not meet the target, but they exceeded their, they were above baseline. And in two, they met their target. So we wanted to say, okay, what was something that they also had in their strategies that bubbled up and was considered a best practice, because they weren't the only institution that were doing this particular best practice. So one of the things that they talked about was their ways of creating pipelines. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of it because we're going to have someone here that's going to talk a little bit more about what they're doing. But just giving you a little bit of background of how we kind of came to the decisions of how we created these best practices. So under opportunity, we have creation of pipelines, and you'll see how they talked about specifically creating these dual enrollment experiments and making sure that they are having their academic career exploration programs with some of their high schools. So they were intentional about really connecting with the high schools to create that pipeline so that they could have students enrolled in their campuses. So for student success, again, looking at student success, we know student success refers to not only retention of students, but completion of their academic program. And so the strategies that we consider best practices that bubbled up, if you will, were how institutions described minimizing non-academic barriers. You heard Lee Nimitz talk about the importance of meeting students' basic needs. Institutions that had examples of integrated first-year experiences, as well as specifically intrusive early intervention and intrusive advising. So an example of that comes from the University of Kentucky, and you'll see the red outline for their particular scorecard, where on the metrics, the metrics that refer to student success go from retention, degrees, and graduation rate. And so as we look at the metrics, you'll see that they either had a yellow or a green for the majority of those metrics, where they either were making progress. If they did not meet their final target, they at least finished above baseline. And you can see as they go forward for the majority, they're creeping up a little by little each time, or they actually finished at the end of that 5-year period at their particular goal. And so again, I won't go into specifics. We have someone who's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that they do, but specifically want to look at their integrated first year experience and some of the things that they talk about, how they implement that on their campus. What does it look like from the individuals who are the boots on the ground? And so talking about their UK 101, their academic orientation is part of the work that they do. And I'll give you just a second to read through that. Again, we're going to have somebody who's going to give some more specifics on that. And all of this information is in that this report that will be published for you all to really dig into and to review. And then finally, best practices for impact. We know that is campus climate, being inclusive and working with cultural competency. And so for our intents and purposes, we're looking at best practices referring to cultural competency, professional development and training for faculty and staff on campuses, as well as looking at culturally competent hiring practices. Those are the things that multiple people were doing in this area as we looked and reviewed at those reviewed those strategies. And so here, you'll see that for Northern Kentucky University, at the end of the 5-year period, they were making progress toward looking at diversifying their tenure track faculty, and then looking at the management occupations section. They actually really exceeded that and blew that actual metric out of the water by that particular time in the year. And so again, what was NKU doing? Talking about hiring practices, their partnership with their chief diversity officer and the Office of Inclusive Excellence, and what they were doing to update their policies. You'll see that in their research, their search process, they wanted to make sure that there was implicit bias trainings that were completed, how they were posting positions in multiple networks where they could invest in that particular opportunity for their campuses. And again, we have someone that will speak to that as well. And so again, for our next steps and lessons learned for this whole apologies for that. For our next steps and lessons learned, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we publish these findings. And so we're working on tweaking that, and that should be coming up really, really soon. And then we want to make sure that we get on campuses and make sure we have opportunities to really see this work in action. We want to make sure that we have highlights like we're doing today, because we haven't been able to do that for a while. We want to make sure that we are making the work known of our institutions. And so we're going to get out on campuses, and we're going to invite some more people to come in and share with you all as well. And then our lessons learned in terms of this process. Well, one, again, it was kind of difficult in some instances because we want to be flexible when we have strategy revisions. But again, very rarely, I can't remember if there was an example where the strategies that an institution started with in 2015, it's the same strategy that they ended with in 2021, and we allow for flexibility. And so we want to make sure we're training on what is the difference between a strategy, a goal, an action step, to make sure that, and at the same time, there have been a lot of turnover in staff. So we've done some trainings, but we haven't done as many as we could. So we want to make sure we provide that technical assistance so we know what a strategy is for institutions as they're writing and revising. And so we also are cautious to say, we're not saying that because an institution did this strategy, implemented this strategy, and because their data show that their metrics show that they met their target, that there's that causal relationship, that it's because of the strategy. We know that, so we said that and mentioned that in terms of the report as well. And so I'll stop here because I just wanted to say, here's the background as to how we've gotten here and what you'll see when you have access to the report. And then I'll stop here so that we can share and hear from Owensboro Community and Technical College, University of Kentucky, and Northern Kentucky in that order. So I'll stop there. And then Gaines, if you have not already done so, if you could start, I think we have
I think everyone has been promoted. I did want to point out that we have Todd Brand here with us today on behalf of the University of Kentucky.
So I think we'll start with Sharmi Davis from Owensboro. And if you, each of them will have about 4 or 5 minutes to just give an overview and highlight of some of the things that the institution is doing.
Okay. Do I need to share my screen for the presentation, or do you just want me to?
If you would.
Okay. Just give me one moment. Oh, I can't share.
Let me make sure we can do that.
And well, yeah, and I don't.
While we're doing that, go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm actually at UK now for my doctoral program stuff. So I won't keep you guys too long because I've got to get back in session. But thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about Owensboro Community Technical College, or OCTC. It's less of a mouthful if I say it that way. My name is Sharmi Davis. I am the Director of Cultural Diversity and the Interim Associate Dean of Student Affairs. And so I'm just going to talk to you about a few of our pathways from K through 12 to college and some of our best practices. Dr. Offit already mentioned some about our dual enrollment with our high school students. About 1/3 of OCTC students are duly enrolled. It's where it's offered at the high school, taught by an eligible instructor. Students receive credit through OCTC, earning high school and college credit simultaneously. As of right now, so fall 2021 and fall 2022, we were at 220 URM students that were enrolled in dual enrollment, and hoping to just continue seeing some increase there. For dual enrollment, we do have an OCTC senior admissions advisor, and she works very closely with every single one of the high schools in the area and in the surrounding area. She doesn't necessarily handle like Hancock County, but there's somebody in her area that takes care of all the Hancock County students. And we have Owensboro Catholic, which is handled by somebody else. And then all the Davis County schools, she's their counselor of sorts. She handles all of the high school tours and even tours for elementary and middle school students. So throughout the year, she's constantly doing tours of the campus and organizing those so that students in working with the different trades so that students can get that hands-on experience. She does advising sessions and evening events at the high schools. And then there's also a program fair that we've started doing at OCTC. So for example, there'll be like Davis County Schools Program Fair, Owensboro High School Program Fair, where those specific schools come on campus. We have every single program has a table and the labs are open. So students can check out the labs and their parents are usually there. And then there's like a quick session where they can talk about transfer. So that's something we're going to continue doing. And something that Dr. Offit also mentioned is the ACE program, which is the Academic Career Exploration Program. That was started in 2021, I believe. And my years are kind of getting jumbled there at times. But it is a partnership with Owensboro Black Expo and Owensboro High School and OCTC. That's how it started. And this last year, we incorporated Davis County Public Schools. And it's a school-based mentoring program for African-American high school students in the city of Owensboro. Its main purpose is to increase the number of African-American students that earn their college degree. We are currently also working on developing an ACE program for the Hispanic population. It's probably not going to happen for 23-24, but hoping for 24-25. We're really wanting to grow this program into something elite. And, we give the students certificates, but we want it to be something they can have on their application for college and for resumes. So it continues to grow. We started with maybe 15, 20 students. We were thinking, we had almost about 40 to 50 that were registered. Trying to take it back down a little bit because I still wanted to have that intimate appeal and where there's that one-on-one connection with the students. And especially we bring them into classrooms and they do exercises. So it just works a little better if it's a smaller group. So we're going to actually divide up the Owensboro High School students and Davis County Public School students and do, say they're doing like a psychology session or something one day. And then when we have a guest speaker, then they'll all be together. And we've been doing college tours and things along those lines. I think programs like this have really helped improve the diversity and the URM numbers at OCTC. And fall 2021, our total enrollment was 4,111 students, and 490 of those students were URM. And then for fall 2022, our numbers were 4,623 for total enrollment, and our URM numbers went up to 593. So there is improvement there. And I think programs like this and our dual enrollment are helpful there. We also received funding from the systems office, from the KCTCS systems office. Sorry, I'm in a room I probably shouldn't be in, so the lights just went out. If it gets a little dark, I had to sneak in here. So we use those funds to take the male ACE students on college tours. We wanted to do 3, but we just couldn't fit it in. In the spring, it's really hard because once you get to May, they start doing testing. But we were able to take the students to University of Louisville and Western Kentucky University. And those were great experiences. A lot of these students had never even been out of Owensboro. That may seem crazy, but you know, a lot of them that had not. I actually had one student that didn't want to go, that we were trying to get him to go, and he just did not want to leave Owensboro. So we took, the first tour was to U of L, and they did a fantastic job there. And we bought the students like little swag items while they were there. And they have great benefits. You know, they gave us vouchers. It's, you know, they have tours that are geared towards the RN populations. I don't know if anybody knows that, but I learned all this, and they did a great job. We have some students that definitely are considering going to U of L. And I made a U of L joke at the last meeting I was at. I will not do that now since I'm at UK, even though it's probably safer via Zoom. And so then we went to WKU. We had the same situation, well taken care of. The students, of course, they met a group of young Black males that have an organization there on campus. And so, you know, these high school students really felt like they were being heard, and they felt like they were meeting people that were like them. And that's really what I wanted to get out of the experience, is that these students don't know what else is out there. And so, you know, they don't know that there's diversity and people that look like them in higher education. So I think a lot of them walked away learning so much, and hopefully either go to U of L or WKU or UK. And let's see if I have one more. Sorry, I start going on my tangent. I had some pictures and just of us at U of L and WKU, and I'm much shorter than everybody else. I don't really need to show anyone. There's lots of me like squinting down, you know, so that I could be in the picture. But that's all I have for OCTC. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer any.
Thank you again for sharing your information, Sharmi. We appreciate that, and just keep up the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Well, you all have a great day. I'm gonna sign off then.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And at this time, we're going to turn it over to Kirsten Turner and Todd Brand from the University of Kentucky. I'm not sure which one is going to speak, but turn it over to both of you all.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with all of you. I'm Kirsten Turner, and Todd, by all means, please introduce yourself. Todd and I tend to do a lot of these together. And so if it's all right with you all, we're just going to kind of go back and forth with each other. I serve as the Vice President for Student Success at UK. And in that role, we have all of the President Capilouto's vision was anything from the time a student says they might want to come to UK all the way through to graduation. And so a lot of the traditional student affairs, traditional undergraduate education, value added type of co-curricular and extracurricular experiences, plus some all of enrollment management. So that's kind of in our umbrella. And Todd, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll talk about where we are on student success.
That sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. Todd Brand, Executive Director for Analytics. I lead our Institutional Research, Analytics, and Decision Support Group, IRADS for short, and we are responsible for providing accurate and consistent information across the campus, as well as really leveraging embedded analysts throughout our departments to achieve our institutional goals. So really our mission as a unit is to use data and analytics to align our finite resources with the students who need them the most.
So Todd and I, for the last about 7 or 8 years, we've been working with a team across campus, a lot of our faculty, staff, and just the experts across campus to really think about student success, and for all of our students, but particularly for what we call our opportunity students, who are students who are at they have entering characteristics that might suggest they might need additional support and scaffolding in order to make it past that graduation. About 7 years ago, our Board of Trustees under President Capilouto's leadership charged the university to really rethink the way that we organize ourselves, the way that we do this work, and think about increasing our retention and graduation rates without becoming more selective. So really, we have a very strong mission to serve, as you all do, to serve the Commonwealth. And so what we've been doing has been organized around these 4 principles. So we'll get to some particular programs that we've been doing for particular communities and cohorts of students within UK, but wanted to start to just kind of level set where we are. We believe at UK that students are at the center of everything we do, and issues around persistence or graduation, we believe you can bucket it into 4 areas. So any sort of interventions we do, or what the data kind of tells us that we're doing, or any sort of programmatic engagements, we really see it around academic success. So are they able to pass their courses? Can they pass Chemistry 105 or college algebra? Do they have time management or executive functioning skills? Or do they need help with writing or reading? So that kind of academic stream or vertical of support that we need to provide. Next is financial stability. Are they able to pay for our tuition? Are they having to work 3 jobs? Do they have stress in terms of they may be able to meet tuition, but they don't have any other financial safety nets, things of that nature. Belonging and engagement. Do they feel like UK is a place that they fit, that they belong? Do they have friends? Do they have a community within themselves? That this is a place that they feel that they're part of the community. And then the 4th is wellness, and that's both physical and mental well-being. And I think we all know the issues that our students are facing on those scores, and many of our staff as well, and faculty. And so we try to bucket any interventions that we do. We try to think through the ways that we organize ourselves around these 4 areas. And then circling those 4, you'll see what we've talked about is a culture of evidence. That's a lot of what Todd does, and a lot of what Todd has ushered in over the last 6 to 7 years. Is every decision we make around these interventions is based in the data, and looking at the data analytics, and really trying to be driven by what the data tell us, whether it's assessment or whether it's correlation or causation or what it might be. And so we have a really rich data analytics group that we've built up over the last 7 years, but that drives a lot of the work that we do in persistence and graduation. Strategic communication is the next. We really believe in how do we communicate with our students, whether the different modes of communication. Is it electronic? Is it actually door to door? Do we go to their residence hall? Is it snail mail where we send a postcard to the student to their home address, but we know the parent's going to read it? And we track all of that, and we really try to think about the ways in which we engage in the strategic communication to our students. And then the last one is this culture of care, ushering in that's why we're here. We're here to help care for the student, putting the student at the center of what we do. So that just gives you kind of a conceptual framework that we came up with about 6 or 7 years ago that's really driven a lot of this work. And so when we're trying to look at issues of certain segments of our student population and trying to decipher what's going on, Todd and his team prepare, and I'll let him talk you through this, prepare that data and read that data and react to that data literally every day. And then once a week, we all meet to look at it and then start to think about interventions. Todd?
Yes, thanks, Kirsten. So yes, as Kirsten mentioned, in terms of really being data informed and knowing the potential impacts to all the decisions we make, we really like to lean into data informed, not data driven. There's reasons other than data to make decisions, but we always try to think about the impact. So this is basically what I'm thinking every day when I come to work. We always start with the process or the goal there on the left. Are we trying to, talk about the metrics that we've been talking about here today around enrollment, student success, retention, graduation? Where is that data? What are the systems of record? We're an SAP school. Salesforce is our CRM. ProSam's our student financial aid system. And then where where's that data stored? What do the underlying data structures look like? And then once we know those three things, then we can move to the upper right and actually think about data and analytics. I always like to say that data without context is meaningless, and that we have to understand the preceding three steps before you can really know what a number means, what it represents, and how we're going to utilize it to try to improve the outcomes for our students. And really a foundational belief throughout this is just that if we relentlessly read and react to the data, that we can see improved student outcomes. And I think—
Go ahead, Todd, please.
Yeah, so I think just this is one quick example. We're going to move into some UK 101 information, but a quick example of that is our UK LEADS program. We talked about financial barriers a little bit. So this is the development of an individual tailored financial award based on unmet need. Based on all of our research, unmet needs really the right financial metric to be looking at as opposed to EFC or AGI, to really inform student success as it relates to both retention as well as first year GPA. And so with these individual tailored awards through the fall 16 through fall 2020 cohorts, we distributed about almost 2,000 thanks to an institutional commitment as well as donor funds, and a great work of our Office of Philanthropy at the University of Kentucky. And so if you're looking on the upper left there, those almost 2,000 students, without any additional funding, we were predicting they would be retained at about 65%. The model told us that with additional funding, about 76%, and they were actually retained at about 79%. So that's about almost 2,000 students, 10 to 15 percentage point increase. And then this is really making decisions at the individual student level, but then those individual decisions really bubble up to macro impacts. You'll see in the lower left, almost 24% of the recipients were URM students, disproportionately recipients of those awards relative to the overall population.
So what we do every week is we have Todd and his team does a pretty robust slide deck, and we have an all-campus retention meeting. That's what we call is the retention meeting. Anyone on campus is welcome to come to it. We get traditionally about 60 to 80 people a week, and then we have a Canvas shell. Canvas is our content management system. A Canvas shell quote unquote course where we have about 240 people who've signed up for that, and they can get any of the information from the retention meetings off of that Canvas shell if they can't make the in-person meeting. But we start every single meeting with a slide deck where Todd walks us through where our students are at that particular time, and we slice and dice it by major or by college, by different demographic characteristics, by in-state, out-of-state, by Pell eligible, first gen, race, ethnicity, gender, all sorts of different areas. And then we workshop it as a group. And most of the people who attend those meetings, as I said, it's an open table, a wide table, anybody can come. It's mostly student success professionals. So it's like your academic advisors, your career counselors, your Res Life team, a lot of people, our tutoring centers, things like that. And we all start to talk through what are the numbers telling us. And so to Todd's point about context and people who are on the front lines. And we start to then, depending on the week and depending on what the data might be screaming at us at a particular time of the year, we start to do real-time interventions. And since we have so many people at those meetings, we're able to try to, not to overuse the word pivot, and pivot came out all during COVID, but we try to pivot midstream if we see something. And I'll give you one example that we saw about a year ago. It was about March or April of last year. And we were seeing our Black African-American female students not re-registering at the same rate that they normally do. And they were actually lagging behind even their Black African-American men, which doesn't usually happen. Usually they outperform in terms of just registering for the next semester at a higher rate. So that was one of the data points that we brought to the retention meeting, and people started to talk about it. And through those conversations, because you had the people from different offices and who were working with different subpopulations, we started to unpack issues around because our female population as a whole was also lagging. So there were some care orientation issues that I think we developed some hypotheses on. But we also then discovered that there was some community-based disagreements going on in several of our MPHC chapters, sorority chapters. And that there were some issues there that we needed to help unpack as students were trying to decide whether or not they wanted to re-register. So that's an example of where when we're in those meetings, we're looking at the data and we're in real time, literally trying to change course to try to help these students persist and continue. Don, I think you all were particularly interested in our UK 101. So happy to provide a little bit of background on that particular initiative. Like I said, we've got different initiatives around all 4 of those areas. One of them is our academic orientation course, which is a first year. We do offer it to transfer students, but it's primarily first year students who take it. It's a 1 credit hour course over the course of 10 weeks. And Todd's going to walk you through some of the numbers and some of the things that we've seen there.
And so in fall 22, we had over 100 sections of UK 101, over 3,000 students enrolled. We also have about another 1,500 students who are enrolled in the college equivalent sections of UK 101. And so generally speaking, when we're looking at the data, we're looking at both UK 101 as well as their equivalents. But if you're looking on the lower left there, URM students in UK 101, you're generally seeing both higher retention rates as well as GPA for the students in UK 101. For example, fall 21, 84% second fall retention for URM students in UK 101 versus 73% for students not in UK 101. And in terms of the fall GPA, 2.82 versus 2.47. That's the lower left table. The lower right table, first gen students, similar trend. The magnitude's not quite as large, 81% versus 76% in terms of the in terms of second fall retention. The GPA is at 2.84 versus 2.67. And then one example that we've been working on recently, actually in last Friday's retention meeting that Kirsten mentioned, is that data is really telling us that trying to get the incentivized students to enroll in UK 101, since it's not a mandatory course, but working with our advisors to target our opportunity students, i.e. our most at-risk students, but like to always emphasize that growth mindset. So really utilizing that nomenclature of opportunity students. And we are working currently via Tableau workbooks to really surface the students, the URM first gen. There's one college in particular that it seems quite impactful to add and then drop. And so the chart on the right there are students who enrolled in UK 101, perhaps their advisors planned that course for them, but then they dropped it before the last day to add a class. The numbers are relatively small, but again, really trying to work this one student at a time. And we'll use this data to, as we're moving through our orientation season right now, surface the data to the advisors so that they can easily see the students who added and then dropped, so that they can make an individual level decision as to whether they need to follow up with that student and try to get that student back into a UK 101. And then just one final slide in terms of the impact, and then I'll throw it to Kirsten. So we're making good progress in terms of the URM second fall retention metric, fall 15 through fall 19, going from 77.2 to 82.2. As Kirsten mentioned, the pandemic impacted cohorts, particularly fall 20 and fall 21 were challenging across the board, and seeing lower retention rates, both overall and disproportionately lower for our URM and first gen students. The good news based on our UK data is that we're seeing a strong bounce back with fall 22. That's still a preliminary number, but things seem to be returning to the trend that we were hoping to see continue prior to those pandemic cohorts.
Well, we can stop there. We'd love to talk more about your ideas and make meaning together, but happy to stop there.
Are there any questions for anyone from the University of Kentucky? You can see that the information that they were sharing also correlated with their scores for their scorecards. And so while we know that many institutions are doing some of these similar kinds of things, we wanted to make sure that we're showing those connections. And if there's a way that maybe UK has shown something that someone at another institution's like, you know what, we're doing this, but we never thought about doing this as well, that we can kind of share these kinds of best practices. So any questions for University of Kentucky? I actually attended one of those meetings that they had, their Friday meetings, and so very, very informative. If not, I want to thank you for taking some time to present, and then we're going to turn it over to Northern Kentucky University as they talk about impact.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing this afternoon? I'm excited to be with you this afternoon and to talk about impact strategies. One of the things that Dawn said at the beginning of her presentation was that we were talking about, strategy 11, which is really around cultural competency, on the campus, whether it's through training and development or even the recruitment and retention of faculty, staff, and administrators. So we're going to kind of take you into the weeds a little bit. We're going to actually talk about those strategies, what they look like, what implementation looks like, and what the outcomes are. We think it'll be a good time for you. But before we move there, because we're going to focus on the whole notion around retention of faculty, staff, and the recruitment of diverse faculty and staff, I do want to preface it by saying we have been laser focused on also providing the training and development. We have an inclusive teaching academy, which is a 2-day long experience for faculty where they learn all about inclusive pedagogy, about learning how to have an inclusive learning environment, about how do you have critical and crucial conversations around some pretty sensitive subjects, especially on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual identity in the classroom. And people leave feeling like it was civil, that it was an exchange, and that everybody learned from everyone. So we're really excited about those things. But today we're really going to focus mostly on, because we have 5 minutes, and we may go a little bit, I want that UK 5, baby. Anyway, we're going to try to move through this pretty quickly. And so I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Bruce Mitchell. One of our newest hires is a fantastic gentleman we actually stole from Eastern Kentucky University, and he's also now in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. He's very new, but he's making an impact very quickly, and I'm thrilled to have him here. He came right as we were turning in our CPE report this year, and so he got to see kind of how the sausage was made at the end, and he didn't quit, so we're still pretty excited. Let's go to the first slide. So when we talk about this, and when we talk about the retention and the recruitment of individuals, especially faculty, staff, and administrators, which, like Dawn said, we kind of blew it out the water on the administrative piece. It happens because you're constantly benchmarking, you're constantly analyzing, you're constantly looking at your data. And one of the things that has made us really impactful and really good is the annual CPE diversity report. I know a lot of us whine about it every year as diversity officers, as CDOs, but you can't manage what you don't measure, right? And because every year annually, we're really, digging into our data, digging into our outcomes, looking at our initiatives and really evaluating them, whether or not we should keep them or get rid of them, because that annual CPE report has been magnificent. And so I would say this, I hope it never goes away. Some of my other CDOs will probably beat me up in the parking lot, but I think it has really provided us with an opportunity to keep our fingers on the pulse of our institutions, and more importantly, keeping our fingers on the pulse of the strategies that we say we're using. If they're not working, scrap them. If they fail, they fail. And CPE has not punished us for saying, hey, we tried this and it didn't work, and now we have, to use that term again, pivoted to something else. So really want to talk about that. Another thing that has worked in our favor is that we define diversity very broadly at NKU. We talk about it as race, age, class, gender, sexual orientation, country of origin, physical or cognitive abilities, cultural issues, veteran status, or religious affiliation, because we really want a diverse campus community. And having a diverse campus community moves beyond race and gender and religion, and it really encompasses so many aspects of who we are as humanity. And so really excited about that. So today, in our very short amount of time, I want to make sure that what we talk about today is how we develop and implement hiring policies, procedures that really assist in increasing the size, the quality of our search pools, for hiring pools. And how do we ensure that our policies and practices are equitable and inclusive? Let's go to the next slide, Bruce. Uh-oh, are we moving? Okay, because I can't move the slide. Bruce, can you move? There we go. So what we're going to talk about here, and when we talk about this work, it's really about talent management. Diversity, equity, and inclusion work in and around diversifying faculty and staff has really got its roots in talent management and really addressing, reviewing, and changing policy. It's a process, and it's not a reactionary tool. You can't be reactive. You have to do this every day. It really requires preparation. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what does preparation look like. If you're going to be successful at really hiring and having a diverse faculty, staff, administration, it's mandatory that you teach the individuals who are running the search committees how to do their job. That includes having unconscious bias training, and not just the surface level, let's check the box, but let's break into small groups. Let's have workshops. Let's talk about what it looks like. Let's talk about national trends and how it has affected us. And let's look at our own internal data. And I'll tell you, throughout this information and throughout this presentation, you will hear, like UK, we really value data. And what we always say at NKU is that information without data is opinion. And we cannot do diversity work based upon opinion. We have to have empirical data, qualitative data, and quantitative data that really supports where we're going and how we're doing the work. Then you got to identify, your and prioritize your DEI goals. And so we have brand new goals that go across the enterprise that have its tentacles in every aspect of campus life, whether it's the classroom, whether it's intramurals, whether it's the rec center, whether it's student activities, programs, athletics. We have our tentacles and go up in our searches. And when we're out here trying to recruit, retain, and promote our faculty, staff, and administrators. You have to look at the key talent implications. What do we need? Why are we doing what we're doing? One of the things that I was saying to someone the other day was, it even takes time, you even have to take time to look at your job descriptions. How are they written? Do you have a talent strategy? And understand your talent funnel and your recruitment funnel. And identify historically underrepresented employees, populations, before even posting the job. So you can be strategic about where you post the job. And interview more than one member of an underrepresented group. All the data says that when you interview more than one member of an underrepresented group, it normalizes their candidacy, and there's a greater chance that you'll hire a woman or a person of color. Utilize directories and listservs. Remember that candidates are also interviewing you when they're on campus. And when we talk about being intentional and descriptive in our job descriptions, I'm gonna give you one small example, and I won't use NKU, I'll use another institution that I was consulting for. And they were really looking for talent in theater and in dance. And they couldn't understand why they had a strong program. They couldn't attract people who could do some of the more contemporary and even more ethnic dance types of instruction. And so when we started to look at their job description, the job description talked about ballet, it talked about all different other kinds of techniques, but it never mentioned those particular types of skills that they were looking for. But when we diversified the job description and said, we want someone who understands contemporary African dance. We want someone who understands the techniques of Judith Jamison or Alvin Ailey from Dance Theater of Harlem. When we diversified those things, we diversified who applied. And we didn't say we wanted a Black candidate. We didn't say we wanted a Latino candidate. We said we wanted someone who had studied these particular genres of the art. And we got people from all different races and ethnicities who applied who had done just that. And it ended up being a magnificent pool. You're going to provide opportunities for the candidates when they come to campus to actually meet people who have similar scholarly and professional interests and opportunities, and have them connect with the affinity groups on campus, because they are interviewing you just as you are interviewing them. And we have learned that as we try to diversify our campus and diversify our faculty. Next slide, please. The next part of it is management and is implementation. You have to measure and monitor institutional progress at every stage of your recruitment, your interview, and your hiring process. Were we successful? Was the strategy that we used successful? You don't wait until the search is over and say we failed at step one, but you kept on moving. You have to measure and monitor institutional progress at every stage of your recruitment, interview, and hiring process. You have to be adaptable and make equity-minded changes to your hiring processes that you implement. And you have to use strategies that facilitate unbiased processes. And one of the things that we've had people use are blind resumes review. And folks at first were like, I don't want to do a blind resume review. Isn't it important that we know that they're Black, that we have an African-American candidate who's in this pool? And I said, just try it. Just try the blind resume review. And so we had the College of Arts and Sciences do it. And so we took out all race, we took out their names, because sometimes names can make people believe the person's Black. If my name is Jamal Jackson, you may believe that I'm African-American. So we took out all the names and we took out all the colleges, anything that would identify them. as a person of color or of a particular gender and or religion. We ended up with the most diverse candidate pool we had ever gotten for the College of Arts and Sciences. And we ended up hiring a person of color. And they were shocked because ultimately we did not look at race, we did not look at ethnicity, we did not look at gender. We looked at their skills, we looked at their accomplishments, we looked at their research, and we looked at what they brought to the institution, what our deficits were in the college, and were they able to fill that gap? And that blind resume review process has been successful on more than 4 or 5 occasions because we took all the opportunities for bias out of it. We only looked at skills and abilities, and each time we still ended up with a diverse pool. Utilizing interdisciplinary cluster hires. When you have people, and you say in that cluster hire and in that job description, we really want someone who also has DEI-focused research. So you may be a dual hire. You may be in the Office of History, you may be in the Department of History, the College of History, but you may also have an appointment in political science, and you may teach, I don't know, African-American political thought. You may teach women in politics, but you bring a DEI-focused research component, and it really diversifies the candidate pool and the perspectives and gives us a global village kind of a response to hiring because people have global perspectives. And it really helps when also too, you include international folks into that process. Let's move to the next slide. If I'm going too fast, let me know. Impact strategies. And so this is what you invited us here to talk about. And I would say that through assessment, analyses, policy change, and initiatives, we have aggressively pursuing more equitable hiring and search processes. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. Have we been successful? Yes, we have. Do we still have a long way to go? Absolutely. Because we've had great success in particular colleges. We've had great success with particular administrative functions, but not in all. And in all, some of them, we still have huge deficits and huge opportunities for growth. And so again, in partnership with my office, the Chief Diversity Officer, and the Office of Inclusive Excellence, the colleges and departments are updating policies where equity gaps are found, and they're implementing new strategies for recruitment and retention of underrepresented minority employees every day. Let's move to the next slide. So one of the things that was an impact strategy was, how do we develop the individuals who are in the search process? Oftentimes, we just select people because they're subject matter experts. Being a subject matter expert does not mean you make a good member of the search committee. And so we talk about what it means to be on the search committee, what your responsibility is to the institution. Have you gone through the implicit bias training? And oftentimes when we don't have diversity for gender or veteran status or a particular piece that we want in a search committee, we'll say, well, why don't we engage someone from this particular college who has subject matter expertise, has a long history of being on major administrative searches, and they bring diversity, equity, and inclusion from their lens to the process. And so we do that, and it's been really successful because if you don't have folks there, you bring someone from who's at the college, who's familiar with the institution, who has a relationship with the department, who just may not be available right there in your college at that time. But it really provides you with providing a diverse perspective and additional eyes to look at a candidate. During that last quarter, we did 17 unique implicit bias trainings for 31 hiring committees across the institution. And we also did quarterly trainings. So always make sure that those committees have the foundational information to move forward. And in that training, there's lots of instruction about what the searches should look like, how you should process the analyses of resumes, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through all that, that's kind of long. Let's go to the next slide. Impact strategies. Again, we believe that information without data is opinion. And so we work hand in hand with institutional research to look at the demographic data, and we monitor the effectiveness of our strategies all along the way. We don't do it at the end of the year, we do it as we move. The Office of Planning and Institutional Research also partnered with my office, and we did an equity assessment. And what is an equity assessment? We did an analysis of the entire institution, of every department, every college, every unit, and said, this is what your diversity looks like. This is what your diversity looks like at these levels. This is your retention of these populations of minorities, of women, of Blacks, of Latinos, of veterans. We told them what their retention looked like. We told them what their hiring looked like. We told them what their promotion and tenure rates looked like. And so they were able to make real informed decisions about who they are and what they look like during the process as they were setting up their search committees. And it's important because we also use that equity assessment data to set goals for the institution along many other aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Always looking to see where our deficits are, where our successes are, and where our opportunities are. Again, the dashboard enables us to collect data relevant to faculty and staff recruitment, promotion, tenure, student retention, because we do the same thing for students too. But today we're talking about faculty and staff, but we also do this for students too, with a specific focus on underrepresented minorities. And again, this comprehensive equity analysis has really worked for us at NKU. Let's go to the next slide. NKU's most historically diverse presidential cabinet happened in 2018, and we have not looked back. And NKU appointed 4 African Americans, 3 men and 1 woman to the presidential cabinet. That had never happened in the history of the institution, and it was the first African Americans on the cabinet. And then at that time, we actually had 4, 3 men and 1 woman. In 2021-22, the cabinet experienced leadership transitions and hired its first Latina and first woman to serve on the cabinet. And she serves as the university's athletic director. And she is the first Latina woman to serve as athletic director in the Horizon League as well. We are so proud of the standards we're setting and how high we're setting the bar for even our external partners, even in athletics. And it should also be noted that university CFO left the institution, and the university appointed a Latino man as interim CFO, which represented another historical first for NKU. We have since hired a permanent CFO, but that was also a first. Let's go to the next slide. The Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences worked with Human Resources to track whether faculty recommendations for interviews represented the diversity of the pools. Earlier, I said to you, you have to monitor and assess your processes as you move along. The Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences is dead. She's dead focused on it. And one of her things is, that we always said that we couldn't find women to serve in STEM capacities, to teach biology or chemistry or botany or any of these subjects. But with her new focus on diversity and equity and inclusion in our search processes, and even how we evaluate people and make recommendations for interviews, things have changed. And so has the quality of our applicants and the quality of our appointments. The academic and cerebral kinds of individuals that we brought to the institution are beyond measure. They've also evaluated the rubrics criteria, ensured that the positions and positions posts included language expressing a clear interest in diverse applicants, particularly those demonstrated investment in creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment through their teaching, their research, and or service. And when you start to say to people, we also want you not only to you don't have to be a diverse person, you don't have to be Black, you don't have to be Latino, but we do want you to really embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion in how you teach, your research, and your service experiences. Similar changes to hiring practices and policies were also implemented in the College of Health and Human Services, the College of Informatics, Chase College of Law, University Housing, and the University Police Department. Let's go to the next slide. Initiatives that have increased representation, what do those look like? Let's talk about those initiatives. The College of Health and Human Services hired 3 non-tenure track underrepresented minority faculty members, increasing their total from 7 in 2019 to 10 in 2021. And let me tell you why that's important. Some people will say, well, those weren't tenure track, but we didn't have any tenure track positions available. But that did not mean that we still didn't have an interest in having diverse faculty who were talented, who brought a different perspective, who looked at the world through a different lens, through a lens of someone Asian, someone international, someone Jewish, someone Black, someone disabled, someone who was a veteran. But having diverse perspectives in those classrooms was essentially important. And in that particular setting, they just happen to all be underrepresented minorities. In 2021, additionally, the DEI postdoctoral fellow for the College of Human Services was retained and renewed in August of 2021, and they're just finishing up their tenure now. So we also have postdoctoral fellows in the College of Health and Human Services, which is a DEI appointment. In the College of Informatics, we created the College of Informatics Diversity Fellow faculty position. Again, oftentimes you may not be able to hire someone permanently to be in that position because you don't have the money, you don't have the budget, and you don't have the line, but you do have adjunct funds, and you can increase those and bring in brilliant individuals from across the country to teach students for a semester or 2 semesters as a fellow. and it changes the students' perspective and changes their lives to have these brilliant individuals in their classroom. The position and the initiative will be launched again next year, bringing a diverse ABD faculty person. And what does that mean? That means all but dissertation. So now we're also talking about bringing in folks so we can grow our own. Maybe when they finish their PhD, they'll come and work for us. But they have great promise. They've done great research. They've won awards. They've done a bunch of crazy different things within their field and within their research. And so we hear about them at conferences or through recommendations from faculty at other institutions or universities. And we know that they're ABD and they want to be faculty. And so we bring them in for a 2-year position while they finish their PhD and give them experience, exposure to teaching at a regional institution like Northern Kentucky University. They may never have that opportunity. So even if we're not preparing them for us, we're preparing them for academia to go out and make a difference and bring their diverse perspectives to higher education. Let's go to the next slide.
Dr. Peel?
Yep.
We appreciate your presentation, and it's clear that Northern Kentucky University is truly a leader in this arena. I'm a little concerned about losing my quorum because we've gone now past an hour and a half. And I just wanted to check to see, is your presentation about to be wrapped up so we can make sure we can get the rest of our business finished?
Well, yeah, I can wrap it up. That's not a problem. Yeah, I can. There's lots of other examples and other things I could share. I'm not sure what I would cut. So what I would do is I'll do an abbreviated finish and close out in a minute or so. How's that?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's very impressive.
No problem. So with that said, one of our things we talk about oftentimes is what we're doing to maintain tenure track faculty from year to year. And so we really have been doing a great job in trying to track them and having an increase from year to year. Because if you want to have a diverse faculty, it's not about just recruiting new people every year. Sometimes it's about retaining the people you have. And so you're not going out replacing them every time that you do a search. And every time you go do a search, you're not looking for to say, hey, we have no one in that department. And you're also not bringing people in to be lonely and isolated, being the only woman, the only person of color, the only international faculty or staff person in that space with a different perspective. Let's go to the next slide. Effectiveness of strategy. Let's move that, keep moving. I guess the best I can give you from a staff perspective, we've really, like I said, increased our senior management representation. It was single digits in fall 2015 when this whole thing started. We're now at 17.5. The NKU Police Department currently employs 14 officers, 4 African-American male officers, 4 female officers, and 3 women administrators. Additionally, NKU Police employs 8 dispatchers, 4 African-American males, 1 African-American male, 1 white male, and 6 women. This is double the national average for percentage of women police officers within any police force across the country when you look at the statistical data. Again, the Chase College of Law has done an incredible amount of work there trying to increase their professor representation, as well as in university housing. We want residential housing to be diverse because that's the global village that our students live in. And so the data's there. Let's go to the next slide. Again, I won't go into this because this really involves more explanation, but I will share with you that the policies and practices implemented in the College of Health and Human Services, College of Informatics, and Chase Law and Housing University Police have really been driven by being intentional and methodical about how we do the work. Next slide. Again, utilizing a dashboard to collect data relevant to faculty and staff recruitment, promotion, and tenure is essential. And one of the things that's really moved us forward. Next slide. And the lessons learned. Let's go to the next slide. That you can really invest in lots of strategies and implementation practices and policies. But if you really don't change the processes and some of the actual policies that institutions have, you're spending a lot of time kind of spinning your wheels. You really have to be laser focused on actually making changes to those policies and processes across the campus community. Next slide. Again, I would just say that mentor programs, utilizing data from retention dashboards has been important in providing someone a mentor to onboard them as new persons to the community, providing them with someone who looks like them, who can help them navigate their way through the institution is significantly important. Next slide. And again, the dashboard was a major impetus for the formulation and creation of faculty retention programs. And the data tool was also used to support the equity assessment project. And so we've shared this information with the President's Cabinet, Dean's Council, and continue to leverage this data to do gap analysis. Let's close out. That's it.
Thank you so very much. As you all, as CEO members can see, we wanted to take this opportunity to give some examples specifically from the college campuses of the strategies that you've been reviewing over the past several years. I know some of you have done it for the last 3 or 4 years, and be able to, prior to the pandemic, we used to have meetings on campuses, and institutions used to be able to bring in their boots on the ground individuals who were doing this work to give an overview, and we'd like to eventually get back to that. And so as an impetus for that kind of perspective, we wanted to bring in to support the document that you're going to see, the one that we're talking about in terms of our overview and our best practices. We wanted to bring in representatives from the campuses to be able to show, to support some of that work. So we're very appreciative of all of our presenters today, and hopefully have questions that bubble up a little bit later for that. So thank you very much again for sharing. Any questions about either the process of the document that you're going to see or anything that we've had so far? We're really excited about sharing that with you all.
I want to say thanks to all of our presenters. Very, very impressive work. And it's clear that the work that's being done for diversity and inclusion can be translated in many ways to just regular college and university concerns about retention and attracting university students and college students. So thank you again.
So again, thank you, NKU, UK, and OCTC. And so at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Walker.
Thank you very much, Dr. Offit. Did want to invite you to provide a little bit of information about the campus highlights and visits. Did you want to talk a little bit more about that for this year?
So just what I said, now that we have our dates solidified, and for those of you who were not with us when we were hosted by some of our campuses, if you all would like to meet on campus, we have 4 meetings. Perhaps I think we had some feedback that said some of you would like to maybe 2 out of the 4 meetings choose perhaps a 2-year institution and a 4-year institution based on some of the work that you've seen, that we can go and we can ask them in advance to say, do you all mind? We typically do our October, we've done our October meeting. We have done our October, June, and January meeting. Our April meeting, because it is the time when we share strategies, that seems to be one where we don't have the time to have a campus do highlights, and we want to give them the time. If we're going to go visit their campus, we want to do that. But we'd like to invite CEO members to come. You all have reviewed this work, review the strategies, and be able to say, to choose or throw out some suggestions if you'd like to do that. Hey, I'd like to really see what this institution is doing. I read what they were doing, you know, and then you all give us the ideas, and we'll make, we'll reach out to the institutions to see about availability, et cetera. So we wanted to say that we as the unit at CPE will be doing this campus visits, and we'll be also reaching out to you, particularly if you live in the areas, to be able to join us if you would like. So that's the one thing. And then 2, if you want to have the CEO meeting there, we could, at a campus, we can make that work as well. So just be thinking about that, and we'll reach out to Chair Walker to get some ideas, but just wanted to say that we'll work on that as well. So just wanted to throw that out there to get you thinking about that.
very excited about that opportunity and we welcome input from all of the committee members. If you can communicate with Dr. Offit and also Gaines Brown to talk a little bit about maybe any colleges or universities that you would specifically be interested in visiting. If there's no other business, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Faith.
Myra.
Myra. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We are adjourned until our next meeting on October 23rd. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.